President Trump's refusal to accept defeat in the election has been years in the making. That's according to my first guest, who says that Trump's career is filled with lost battles that he twisted into victories. It's a strategy that's worked pretty well against big banks, small business owners, and pretty much everyone in between. But this time is different. Bloomberg finance reporter Max Abelson, who covers Wall Street's money and power, explains in his newest piece for Business Week. He's fighting time, history, and democracy. Max joins us now from New York. Max, it's so great to have you on the show. Your reporting took you back through some of Trump's failed business ventures, more than 1,000 lawsuits. What's the connection between those past losses and what he's doing right now?
Yeah, that's right, Tim. It's so good to be here. You know, I think that reporters are just like everyone else across America. You know, we're trying to look around and make sense of what's going on. And what Caleb Melby, my colleague, and I did for this piece is we realized that, you know, you really can't look back on American history, that in order to find a president who was just flat out refusing to acknowledge such a clear-cut defeat, history doesn't really help you as much as Donald Trump's own career. And we went back and looked at really important chunks of his rise and his fall and his rises and his falls. And what you see, I mean, really, Tim, just time and time again, is a guy who gets knocked down on the mat and he throws his fists. And, you know, even after the bell rings, if he makes a little contact and he draws some blood, as we read in the piece, he calls himself the champion. He finds sort of Trumpian ways of either winning or saying he's a winner. And we really think that that's sort of a helpful prism to look through to understand this moment and what's going on in the White House.
Yeah, I love this part of your piece. You wrote, quote, "Think of Trump as a boxer who likes to swing his fists after the fight gets called against him. If he lands punches, he names himself the champ. It's a rich kid's version of what it means to persevere against the odds." This is something that infuriates his opponents, but as you say, it dazzles his fans, the more than 70 million people who voted for him. Why is that?
Yeah, that's right. Well, first of all, I would like to give a shout out to Robert Friedman and Joel Weber, our editors on the story. It's really fun to work with them. But, you know, I think it's important to remember that perseverance, you know, and not giving up and stick-with-itness are all, you know, beloved prize things in America. You know, there are millions of people, I'm sure, in this country who see Trump's refusal to give up past, you know, multiple corporate bankruptcies as a perk, as a value, an asset, you know, not a liability. But what he's doing now is, you know, Donald Trump in the Oval Office is not fighting with a condo association in South America or with, you know, Deutsche Bank in Chicago, to quote a line that Caleb, my colleague, wrote. You know, he's fighting with the foundations of American democracy. He's refusing to acknowledge electoral facts. But he is still doing similar things to things we've seen before, and we write about it in the piece. The Department of Justice, his building in Chicago, a building in New York City. It really is a distinct pattern over his career. It's kind of remarkable.
And part of the way that you examine this distinct pattern was by speaking to a host of characters from Trump's business past. One of those that you and your colleagues spoke to is none other than Michael Cohen, President Trump's longtime fixer and attorney. Yeah. What did he tell you?
You know, Caleb Melby got on the phone with Michael Cohen just lickety-split, and when we got this assignment a couple of days ago. And what Michael Cohen says is that Donald Trump is not able. He lacks the ability to acknowledge that he's lost. And what Cohen thinks is that rather than Trump conceding, which is a part of American democracy and the peaceful transition of power, he thinks that Trump is going to keep whipping up his base. And Michael Cohen would know. I mean, I remember when I was reporting our first big Trump profile for Business Week 4 years ago. Actually, it was longer than that. It was in 2015. It was 5 years ago. Michael Cohen, you know, bopped his head into the room while I was interviewing Donald Trump, and, you know, was just clearly so woven into the fabric of Trump's mind and Trump's organization. So we take it seriously when Cohen says that he really doesn't think Trump will ever give up. And it's similar to a message that we heard from Trump's colleagues and fans and the people who've been around him for years and years.
I want to know, Max, what your sources are saying, because people who follow your reporting and have followed it for years know that you're the guy who speaks with the billionaires on Wall Street regularly. What are they telling you about President Trump's refusal to concede over the last week?
Well, I'll speak with you honestly. I'm of two minds about sharing some of this, and I'll tell you what I'm hearing, at least from one prominent finance billionaire, who basically shrugs this off, and thinks that it's a song and dance, and people on Wall Street, people in finance, they look at numbers, and Donald Trump is 5 million votes behind Biden and tens of thousands of votes behind in the key states. So for a finance tycoon like that, he sort of waved this off. But the reason I'm of two minds, Tim, is that, I think that I don't feel comfortable as a journalist sort of just telling readers like, oh, this is fine, this is nothing. Because the reality is, it's not nothing. It's the presidential election and it's American democracy. So what I hope we did with the piece and what I hope readers get from it is get a sense of a pattern in Trump's business career. But, we don't want to undersell what a truly bizarre moment this is in American democracy. And we don't want to tell readers, oh, listen, everything's going to be fine, because I think the reality is, really, no one knows what's going to happen. It's a really profoundly unparalleled moment.
Yeah, and there is a lot at stake. It is a fantastic piece, Max. I encourage everybody watching right now to check it out. Bloomberg's Max Abelson in New York. Thanks for your time, Max. Have a great weekend.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quicktake now for insight in an instant.